right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks again for joining us at Ideal 22, the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility for Learning Conference. And just a reminder, that whole IDEAL acronym was something that our next speaker, Kayleen Holt, came up with. She shared that one last year, and it was the perfect acronym for this event that we've built. And I just mentioned to Kayleen, last year we had just under 300 people sign up for this one. This year we've got more. It was something like 340 last I checked. So it's nice to see that it's growing. And I'm definitely going to continue to have this one at least annually, because this is such an important topic, and the dialogue, the conversations have just been fantastic yesterday and today, this morning with Bridget. That was a really, really enjoyable session. So I hope that you're enjoying the sessions as well. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Kayleen Holt of Scissortail Creative Services. Kayleen is an instructional design consultant who's been designing learning experience for more than 25 years. It's a long time. She's the owner of Scissortail Creative Services, a small company that helps mission-driven organizations achieve their goals through custom learning experiences that make a difference. She blogs about inclusion, accessibility, and learning experience design. If you aren't already following her blog, definitely add that into your blog consumption routine, because Kayleen's blog is absolutely fantastic. And with that, Kayleen, I'll go ahead and just hide myself. If you need me for anything, just give me a shout.
All right. Thank you, Louise. And hi, Joelle, Saide, Bridget, Christina. Nice to see everybody. I was telling Louise I had some technical difficulties earlier when practicing sharing, so everybody cross your fingers. Hope that everything works out and I'm able to share, send all the good vibes. Before I do share my slides, I want to give you a quick visual description for anybody who can't see me, either due to vision disability or low bandwidth, poor connectivity, something like that. I am a white woman in my early 50s. I've got long, dark blonde hair. I'm wearing a red shirt and glasses, sitting in my home office with some floor-to-ceiling bookshelves painted teal behind me, full of books, and some cozy armchairs. All right, I'm going to try sharing now, and let's see if it will work this time. Should see some trees. Nice. Okay, and my slides. Yay! Everybody must have crossed their fingers for me. Thank you. I'm going to be talking to you today about the Inclusive Learning Pledge and learning and development's role in diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging efforts. Louise gave me a great introduction. I am the founder of Scissortail Creative Services, and I write a blog there called Scissortail's Learning Nest. I put the link in the chat. If you're not sure what the heck a scissortail is, it is a kind of bird. It's the state bird of Oklahoma. It looks like this. It's mostly black and white, and on the underside, there's some salmon pink in the wings, and it's just a really beautiful bird and likes to frequent my backyard here in Oklahoma. Yeah. It gets its name, as you might expect, from its tail, which is split in two like scissors. I am going to be talking to you about the Inclusive Learning Pledge, which is something I wrote with the help of several wonderful people, most of whom are in this community, and you'll get to see all their lovely faces on a slide later. So in this presentation, I'm going to share some guiding beliefs, some values, and some principles of inclusive learning and how we in learning and development can and should be leaders in diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging efforts. You'll have an opportunity to sign the pledge to show your commitment to inclusion, and I hope you'll share it with other folks as well. So before we get into the pledge and all the stuff that goes with it, I want to talk just briefly about why I wrote it, why I care so much about inclusion, beyond it simply being the right thing to do. Um, One reason is because I have all these invisible disabilities. I made this little graphic with wordart.com, which is a really fun tool for making little word art graphics in whatever shape you want to make them in. And this has some of my diagnoses and my suspected diagnoses in it, some of which are PCS, which stands for post concussion syndrome, or the more recent term is prolonged concussion symptoms, which include migraine, a lot of other things, asthma, IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and even autism, which might be a surprise to some folks. It was to me. Um, I haven't talked publicly about that one yet, but over the last year or two, I've been learning more about neurodivergence and about autism specifically because my daughter, who is now 26, discovered not that long ago that she is autistic. And so, as I was learning more about her autistic traits, looking back at her childhood with her and saying, "Oh yeah, that's an autistic trait," I started saying things like, "Oh, but I did that when I was a kid," and "Oh, I do that still," and all of these things. So I made the discovery that a lot of parents of autistic kids discover is that, oh, they get it from me. Okay. But the condition in this list that causes me to feel excluded is the you see the big letters MCAS, which is a rare disease in which mast cells, which are white blood cells throughout the connective tissues in our bodies. They're the cells responsible for allergic reactions and for inflammatory responses. Um, so those cells in MCAS are overactive, which is what's, I believe, causing my airborne food allergies. And I've been talking to my doctor about this. Don't have the official MCAS diagnosis yet, but that is what she suspects. And it's, like I said, a rare disease and not super easy to diagnose. But my mast cells are kind of like, you know, how car alarms used to be, where every time a strong gust of wind blew through the parking lot, somebody's car alarm would go off. They're just really oversensitive. Everything's a trigger, everything's a threat. That's my body's alarms are going off all the time, triggering asthma, sometimes anaphylaxis, as well as a whole host of other problems like gastrointestinal issues and skin rashes and joint pain. Lots of fun going on. So why am I talking about this in a talk on inclusion? Managing MCAS means avoiding the triggers that set off my body's alarms. And my triggers, and I've talked about these before, one of them is caffeine. So I can't be around caffeine at all. Other folks drinking a Dr. Pepper or a cup of coffee, I cannot be around it, even if it's pretty far away from me. Um, and there's a bunch of other things too. So I'm going to list a bunch of things that I can't be around, that my husband, who also has airborne food allergies, can't be around, my daughter can't be around. And I want you to think, since we just celebrated Thanksgiving here in the US last week, those of you who celebrated, I want you to think, as I list these things, could Kayleen and her family have come to my Thanksgiving? And I'm going to bet the answer is no. So I've already said caffeine, so that rules out a lot of places. And other things with caffeine like coffee and chocolate and tea, even if they're decaffeinated, some of those things are still a problem. Pumpkin, bananas. My husband has airborne allergies to peanuts and poultry, chicken, turkey, eggs. My daughter has airborne allergies to cinnamon and blueberries. And cinnamon, by the way, is in a lot of things that you wouldn't suspect, like ketchup and barbecue sauce and sodas, like dark colored sodas, lots of things. So, am I welcome at anybody's Thanksgiving? Probably not. Well, that's okay, because not welcome at my own family's Thanksgiving either, apparently. This is why I'm talking about all of this related to inclusion. We live within welcome, but not very comfortable. You're welcome, but you might die. My husband's family lives within, like, we live within 20 miles from just about everybody in my husband's family. His siblings, his parents, nieces, nephews, some of the cousins. I mean, a lot of his family is right here. Yet it has been years since I've seen most of them. And that's because every family get together has food, and food that we can't be around. And they're not making those accommodations so that we can be there. A few of them have come to visit us at our invitation. We can't really go visit other people because there are things in their homes that are not safe for us. So, yeah, a couple of years ago, right after I had first developed the caffeine allergy, and right after my husband had first developed his poultry allergy, we got an invitation to the family Thanksgiving as Facebook invite. And I responded in the group and said, we just developed these new allergies to add to the list. And I think we're going to have to sit this out because it won't be safe for us. And instead of anyone in the family posting, you know what, give us that list again, we'll make sure it's safe because we want you there. No one posted that. No one's ever said that. But instead of even a note like, oh, I'm so sorry, I wish you could be there, we're going to miss you. No. The first response back after I posted that in the Facebook group was my sister-in-law posting, I'm bringing brownies. And remember, chocolate is one of the things I can't be around. So knowing that, and I know how good chocolate is. I used to have chocolate all the time. I tell people I met my lifetime quota when I developed my allergy because my body just said, no more of that. That's enough. I know how good chocolate is, but to know without a doubt that to certain family members, it is more important to them that they have chocolate at their get together than it is that my family can come, that's hurtful. And that's one reason inclusion matters so much to me, is because I know what exclusion feels like. But that's just part of it. This picture is the rest of the story. These are my kids, most of them. We had gathered together for my birthday last month. And so from left to right on the couch, we've got my husband, Danny, me, our daughter, Tessa, her fiance, Allison. And then in the front from left to right, with the green hair is my non-binary daughter, Nay. And yes, they prefer the term daughter. They use they, them pronouns, but daughter, sister. Thank you, Saide. And then on the right in the front is my non-binary bonus kiddo, Colt. And in the middle, my non-binary bonus grandkid, Nat. Everyone in this picture is neurodivergent in some way, several in multiple ways. Most folks in this picture are queer. We've got, as they call themselves, the gays and the theys. Gay, non-binary, asexual, bisexual. We've got like the whole pride flag in my family. And like most parents would say, my kids are the people who mean the most in the world to me. And I've seen how the world treats them. They're why inclusion matters so much to me, because I want a world that treats my kids better. Those extended family gatherings I talked about, even if they cared enough about us to make sure that it was physically safe for us to go, it wouldn't be psychologically safe for my kids. Remember, I'm in Oklahoma. I'm right in the Bible Belt, so make of that what you will. Our family could make it accessible simply by not serving foods that we're allergic to. Accessibility is the easy part. But making it inclusive means that we would feel welcome, we would feel like we belong, and that we could be ourselves. That would require them to set aside their biases and truly welcome my queer kids for who they are. That's the world I want to create. And that's why I wrote the Inclusive Learning Pledge. So let's talk about some guiding beliefs foundational beliefs that guide our work in inclusive learning. So I would like to ask you, first of all, what are some of your guiding beliefs when it comes to inclusion? What is something you believe that guides your work in inclusive learning? Waiting for chat. Oh, Christina's asking about the pupper. There were actually 5 dogs in the original picture, but I cropped a lot. um, I'm gonna go back up real quick. My the pupper on the couch, that's Abby. That is Nay, the green-haired daughter. That's their dog. And then there's a white one that you can see on Colt's lap over on the right. That's Toby. He's my dog. And then the ones that got cropped out, I'm sorry, puppers, but they weren't really in the shot. We've got Sally and Harley and Bailey, and you can usually see some of them behind me, but I kicked them out today. Okay, so beliefs. I've got everyone should be represented as much as possible. Amen, Sandra. Learning is for everyone. Yes. There's always something to learn. Definitely. Including as many voices as possible. Yes. So I'm going to walk you through the 5 guiding beliefs that I came up with the help of several folks from here. Again, you'll see those folks later. As I do this, I do want to point out throughout this presentation, you'll see some lovely stock photos that are of very diverse groups of people, like the one showing here. It's got people of pretty much all skin tones, at least one person with disabilities, some religious differences showing here, lots of things. I do wish these are from Shutterstock Dream Initiative collection, and I will have a link on the slide at the end if you want to check those out, and I will post it in the chat at the end. I may need a reminder, but these are free photos. Anyone can use them. You'll have to check out their license agreement. They're under the standard license. So anyway, I do wish they had alt text with these photos. They don't. So that is something maybe we can find a place to make that suggestion. Okay, so I've got some other things in the chat. Inclusion is compassion. Yes, it's work that never ends, but it's worth it. Oh, thank you, Christy. Posted the Dream Initiative link for these photos. Awesome. Believe in honoring others' humanity. That is so perfect, Erin, because that's the thing about, like with my queer kids, honor their humanity. Even if, people have different religious beliefs, sure, whatever. If you have a religious belief that is somehow telling you that something about my kids is wrong, first of all, I don't want to hear it from you. I just don't, because there's nothing wrong with them. But secondly, you can set that aside enough to treat them like human beings. That's just basic human dignity. All right, and Christy shared Gender Spectrum, that collection as well. It's another collection of stock photos. Okay, let's get on into the beliefs. The first guiding belief I have is that everyone deserves equitable access to learning experiences where they feel represented, included, and valued. That is the foundational belief of everything else. Feeling represented, included, and valued, that is what inclusion is about. It's not simply getting the invitation, because, I talked about those family gatherings. We get invited. We always get invited. We can't go. So is that inclusion? No, it's not at all. I think I would rather not even be included. Thank you, Heather. Yes, I know that I can add alt text on my own. The reason I said I wish they included alt text is because I don't know how all of the people in these photos identify. So that would be very, very helpful for being able to write the alt text myself, is understanding. Like, I can assume that the woman in the forefront of this picture is blind, but I don't know that for sure. So yeah, And later you'll see some photos where I think there are some transgender people, maybe some non-binary people. I don't know, because you can't tell that from looking at someone. You cannot, I'll just throw that out there. That wasn't originally going to be part of my talk, but you can't tell someone's gender just by looking at them. That's something that my non-binary daughter has been drilling into our heads lately as they go through life and constantly get misgendered. All right, so belief number 2, if learners do not recognize themselves represented, included, and valued in learning experiences, those experiences cannot be engaging, meaningful, or relevant. So everything that we're trying to do as learning experience designers in trying to make our learning experiences engaging and relevant, effective, we can't make them effective if they're not inclusive, because not everyone will have access to them and not everyone will see themselves in them. They will feel othered. So all of those things are important to effective learning. Belief number 3, we value people over profit or policy. This means that we treat people with respect, kindness, empathy, and love. Not only that, but we work to educate and train others to do the same. Belief number 4, we celebrate diversity of all kinds. We believe learning opportunities must be inclusive, equitable, and accessible for everyone. Everyone. Belief number 5. This one comes from recognizing that systemically excluded groups are still being left out of and underrepresented in learning opportunities. These groups include individuals with disabilities, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, Black, Indigenous, people of color, people of certain religions. Lots of folks are still being excluded. And in order to change that great imbalance, we need a conscious commitment from everyone, really, but starting with learning and development professionals to continuously strive to build more inclusive learning experiences and environments. To do this, we have to be willing to explore and address our own biases and commit to learning how to be more inclusive. So those are the 5 guiding beliefs. Now let's talk about values. So in the chat, plop in some of your values when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. What are your values related to inclusion? And while you're doing that, I want to share, I saw recently on LinkedIn, and I shared this post in a group I'm in. Someone who works in recruiting and hiring, like that's in their title, and they claim to care about DEI, because we're in a diversity and inclusion group together, posted something recently that was disparaging toward the LGBTQ+ community. And this happened right after the shooting at the Q Club. And it was a conversation about that, and basically saying that you put yourself out there like that, you deserve what you get, something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but that was the feeling, and it was awful. You cannot claim to care about inclusion while actively excluding some people. Inclusion means everyone. You can't just pick and choose who you're going to say belongs. Inclusion means everyone. So, values. Let me see if I can refresh the chat. Even when we belong to excluded groups, we still hold biases. That is so true, Joelle. Yes. And as a white woman who grew up in predominantly white areas, I live in rural Oklahoma. It's very, very white here, y'all. I'm recognizing I have a lot of biases still and actively work to overcome those. And let me tell you, if you also live somewhere where you're not exposed to a lot of diversity, and like me, I can't even go a lot of places, so I'm very, very isolated. Do what you can from where you are to open up your world. Like, I follow a ton of people on social media who are different than I am. I read books by people who are different than I am. And just keep on working every day to chip away those biases, because we all have them. We definitely do. Christy says, I can't know everything. Be humble and know you're going to get things wrong sometimes, but learn from those mistakes. Amen. That is so true. So I kept it pretty simple with the values, and I hope Luis doesn't mind me stealing from the acronym a little bit. But the ideal values is what I went with. Inclusive learning experience design is guided by the ideal values of inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and love. And let me tell you, the review group kind of went round and round on that last one. Should we mention love in a professional setting? And I say, yes, we should. And I wasn't the only one who said that. But I think when we lead with love, everything else follows. So inclusion means that we value workplaces and learning opportunities where everyone belongs. So I hear a lot of debate about inclusion versus belonging, and to me, they're the same. To me, inclusion is kind of an umbrella over everything else, because if you're not diverse, are you really inclusive? If things aren't equitable, is it really inclusive? So if it's not accessible, it's not inclusive. To me, inclusion is the umbrella. So that's why I talk about inclusion like that. Diversity means that we value and celebrate people of every ability or disability, every race, color, national origin, ethnicity, native language, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender expression and identity, size, marital status, neurotype, any characteristic by which we categorize people. Everybody belongs and everybody has something to bring to the table, and we should just celebrate that, celebrate all those differences. Equity means that we value fairness and justice for systemically excluded people. We recognize that learning and development professionals have a responsibility to address systemic prejudice and implicit bias. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Accessibility, we value people with disabilities and recognize that access to learning and opportunities is a human right. Even the United Nations voted saying that accessibility is a human right. And we have a long way to go before that right is realized for everyone. But the first step is recognizing that it's there. And of course, love. We value people over profit, over policy, over all else, and treat people with respect, kindness, empathy, and love. So let's get into the principles now. We developed a set of 10 principles that drive inclusive learning experience design. First one is that inclusion is everyone's responsibility, and it's a moral and ethical obligation. A workplace cannot be inclusive if only the DEI people care about it. Everybody should care. We're all responsible for creating and maintaining environments where everyone feels represented, included, and valued. Principle 2 is about our commitment to those ideal values. And understanding that commitment is an ongoing process. Someone said something like that earlier. We need to reject the notion of DEI as a buzzword or a trend or a one and done training event. It's an ongoing process. And our ideal values should inform all of our decisions, from learning experience design to hiring, onboarding, salary, promotion decisions. Any of those decisions that you're involved in should be guided by just the foundational belief that everyone deserves to belong. I'm loving seeing in the chat some of these things. Love is an action, never simply a feeling. Bell hooks. Inclusion is what we're doing. Belonging is how it's being received by others. Interesting. So principle number 3. Inclusion starts, or I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Being inclusive means leading with empathy and love. It means listening to and amplifying authentic voices from people who with lived differences other than our own, and seeking to understand those perspectives and recognizing that even when we don't understand, we can still value people as fellow human beings. Um, if if someone doesn't understand my non-binary daughter and or understand, okay, but non-binary, but they like the word daughter and sister, what, even if you don't understand that, you can still treat them with respect and love and empathy. So, this principle means inviting and including stakeholders and learners from diverse and marginalized intersectional backgrounds throughout the learning experience design process. So, those varying points of view can inform our needs analysis, our design, our testing, other decisions that we're making. Principle number 4 is inclusion starts with us. And by us, I'm meaning the learning and development folks, that we play a crucial role in shaping a company's culture from orientation, new hire training, through competency building and leadership development. We're touching all of those points where people are growing and becoming better versions of themselves. What is learning and development if not an agent for change? We are agents for change, and we need to use that influence to create a more welcoming workplace environment where all employees feel like they belong. Principle number 5 is that diverse representation matters. Learners need to be able to recognize themselves in and relate to the learning experiences that we create. This helps them feel like they belong and are safe to be their authentic selves at work. Um, if you're thinking that you don't have any disabled employees or you don't have any employees who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, unless you have unless you're like a freelancer, you work only by yourself, or you have a very, very, very small company, I would doubt that you don't have any employees who fit those categories. Um, they might just not feel safe to open up about those identities. The other thing that goes along with principle 5 is not perpetuating harmful stereotypes. So, in order to not perpetuate harmful stereotypes, we need to know what those are. And it goes back to recognizing our implicit biases, because we might not even know that something is a hurtful stereotype if it's all we've ever seen about a specific group of people. Um, so, commit to learning more and recognizing those things when we can and doing better. Principle 6, accessibility is a human right. I talked about this one earlier. Everyone deserves equitable access to information and professional development opportunities. Learning experiences and environments that are not accessible can't be inclusive or equitable. There's no inclusion without accessibility. I had this conversation with a conference organizer not that long ago who was saying that a particular conference couldn't couldn't be hybrid to include people who can't travel because it wouldn't be an equitable experience for everyone. That was the argument. My argument is that it's not equitable when some people are left out by virtue of the fact that it's only in person. Now, I'm not saying that every single event needs to be hybrid. I understand sometimes there's a place for in person stuff. I just can't go. Lots of other people can't go. So if you do really want to be inclusive, think about who you're excluding by the decisions that you make about venues and other, design decisions. Principle 7, sound design is inclusive design. There's no need to compromise. We don't have to sacrifice good design to make it accessible and inclusive. We can continue to be creative and build engaging and evident, or build engaging courses, engaging learning experiences using evidence-based instructional design practices. They're not mutually exclusive. Sometimes we have to get a little bit more creative to create what we want and make it accessible, but there's always a way. Principle 8 is the language that we use matters. And I chose this particular photo on purpose. How would you describe that photo? I know a lot of people would say, well, that's a man in a dress. Is it? I don't know from telling. Remember, you can't see someone's gender just by looking at them. This may be a non-binary person in a dress, maybe a transgender woman in a dress, maybe a man in a dress. I don't know, because I don't know how this person identifies. And that's the important thing here, is to listen to how people describe themselves. It's okay to ask, what pronouns do you use? It's okay to ask all sorts of questions, but most importantly, just listen to how people describe themselves. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen someone with disabilities post something about their disabilities on social media, and someone in the comments will correct them and say, "You don't have a disability, you're just differently abled." Or "You have a superpower," or whatever else. Don't correct people's language when they're describing themselves. And try to use the language they use to describe themselves. Awesome. Bridget says her first thought, a happy person. Yes. Yes, this person's definitely happy. And Ashley said that too. Joyful person. Sandra says a tall, dark-skinned person with no hair dances in a tan dress with brown shoes. I love it. You're not making any assumptions about gender there. That's awesome. All right. So there's a question. How do you feel about rephrasing that, saying how it's received by others places the burden on the people who don't feel like they belong? If instead we phrase it as how our practices impact others, then we're accepting responsibility. Belonging. So there's a whole conversation in the chat about inclusion versus belonging. And to me, like I said, belonging is a part of inclusion. If you're doing inclusion right, you're going to make people feel like they belong. Let's see. Joelle says it's also important to ask in a genuine manner. Disingenuous questions are often used to further harm excluded people. That is so true. Yeah, there's a lot in the tone of voice when you ask. If you're asking because you genuinely want to know, it's different. If you're asking because you want to argue someone's identity or some other ulterior motive, that's just not doing it right. All right. So I'm going to keep going with principle number 9. We won't let pursuit of perfection get in the way of progress. This goes back to Meryl Evans. If you're not following Meryl Evans on LinkedIn, I encourage you to do so. She's amazing. She's a deaf disability advocate. And her hashtag that she shares all the time is progress over perfection. And you can actually get a t-shirt from Meryl that says that. So yeah, we're not always going to get it right, but we need to just commit to learning from those experiences and doing better next time. And when we unintentionally cause harm, we need to acknowledge that mistake and apologize, and then learn and teach and do better. Last principle, we invite input and welcome feedback. Being inclusive means not making assumptions. We can't know what our learners need if we don't ask. We can't know what our employees need if we don't ask. We can't know what another person's lived experiences are like unless we ask them. Now, I will put this little caveat in there. That doesn't mean go ask, what are your disabilities? Because that's just kind of nosy and maybe not your business. But you can ask learners and employees what they need to be successful. You can share your pronouns, and then if someone is comfortable sharing theirs, and by the way, I forgot to do that at the beginning of this presentation, mine are she, her. But when you share your pronouns in your signatures, in your introductions. It helps people feel more comfortable to share theirs. I would say, and I've written about this before in my blog, I would not make it mandatory for people to share their pronouns. Like when you put together an icebreaker activity or you're doing meeting introductions or something, don't make people do it, because there are still going to be people who aren't comfortable sharing their authentic pronouns at work or in a learning situation. And if you put them on the spot like that, it's not going to feel comfortable for them. So share yours if you're comfortable doing so, and then people will follow suit if they're comfortable with that. So seeking input and welcoming feedback, it's not only about asking what do you need to be successful, it's also asking after a learning event, what could we have done better? Did you feel like you belonged? If not, what can we do to make you feel more welcome? Things like that. And use that input and learn from it to make environments more inclusive. Okay, I'm going through the chat again. Christy says this is some of the shift from aiming for cultural competence to cultural responsiveness. Competence assumes it's something we can learn, as it's focused on expertise rather than focused on listening and responding and improving. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and we can't know everything. Even folks who work exclusively in DEI work can't know everything about everyone's lived experiences. You can't know about every single disability, every single ethnicity, every single religion, every single LGBTQ identity. You just can't. So it involves listening to other folks and learning every single day. Kelly asks, from a training standpoint, is it okay to ask or poll registered users if they need any necessary accommodations? Absolutely, yes. Please ask about accommodations. And that is the best way to ask it too, is what accommodations would help you be successful, rather than do you have any disabilities? Because A, not everyone's going to be comfortable disclosing that they have disabilities, because discrimination is a real thing in our workplaces. B, some people with disabilities don't identify as disabled. I didn't for the longest time, even though I had disabilities. It took a while of following people with disabilities, following people on social media, learning more about the disability community, and learning that, oh, yeah, I guess this does apply to me. I do have disabilities. But I still don't usually say that I'm disabled, because I'm perfectly able-bodied as long as there's nothing in the air trying to kill me or, those sorts of things. So plus the language of disability, it's personal, and it can be very private. It can be embarrassing. I mentioned to you, one of the things I have is IBS, irritable bowel. That's not really pleasant to talk about with people. That's not something I bring up a lot. And there are other conditions that people just don't want to tell you about. But asking what accommodations you need, that's a perfect way to ask about it. And then, as Sarah mentioned, some people may have undiagnosed disabilities, and they wonder they will need proof if they say they have a disability. Absolutely. There was one job that I ended up leaving because I requested accommodations before I was hired, and they assured me everything would be great. And then once I got on the job and started running into problems, they asked me for a doctor's what did they ask me for exactly? My medical records. That's what they told me I needed to provide. Which, by the way, you don't need your employees' medical records. You might need a note from the doctor that says they need these accommodations. You don't need to know their diagnosis for most things, and you don't need to ask their diagnosis, just about accommodations. But anyway, I didn't have those records because I hadn't been to my allergist in years. And when I called them up to get the records, they told me they had purged them, which I'd never heard of a place doing. But So it was taking me a while to get in back to my allergist to see them. I mean, there's a months long waiting list to get in there. And then I kept running into problems at work. So I finally just ended up quitting. And that's how I got into freelancing. All right. So that's all the principles. And speaking of welcoming feedback, I wanted to thank these lovely contributors for reviewing the draft of the Inclusive Learning Pledge and providing input and making it so much better. Thank you all so much. That's got Alan, Bella, Devin, Gwen, Luis, Mike, Rubina, Saide, Star, and my daughter Tessa. All reviewed that, and most have signed it now, and you're going to be able to sign it as well if you want to. Okay, so I was just looking at the chat again. Interesting. Love it. So if you would like to take the Inclusive Learning Pledge to show your commitment to inclusive learning, you can scan that QR code or go to inclusivelxd.com/pledge. The entire website, inclusivelxd.com, is not built out yet. I was hoping it would be by now, but it's not. So the only thing you'll be able to see there is that pledge page. But the rest of it is coming soon. So I will be sure and update you on that. So I would love for you to sign this and share it in your networks, because I want to start a movement among learning and development professionals to start building a more inclusive world, one learning experience at a time. Thank you, Louise, for posting that in the chat. I meant to do it, forgot. Okay. And questions. And here's the link again for the Shutterstock images. Christy had also posted it in the chat. So I'd like to see if anybody has more questions. I don't see any right now. I don't see any.
Yeah, not seeing any questions come in. Chat was really fun, though. I mean, there was just some great commentary in there and excellent discussion.
Definitely.
Loved it.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing. Kayleen, I haven't heard your story like this before, and so I really feel privileged to be able to see your family and to learn more about you, because you are such a core piece of TLDC and things that we do here. Just so important. So I'm really grateful that you shared that with us. It was
Well,
wonderful to see.
thank you. I was happy to get the opportunity to share, and of course, talk about my kids any chance I get, because they're awesome.
Mhm, mhm. I want to make sure that I will be, of course, I'm going to be including a link to this inclusive learning pledge like regularly in all the TLDC stuff. And, because I just think it's important. And I do, it is interesting thinking about the e-learning manifesto. I think that one, the one that was
Yes, thank you for
with the
bringing that up. Yes, that this actually was inspired by the the e-learning manifesto. I'm trying to serious e-learning. Yes, that's what it was.
That's right.
The serious e-learning manifesto, and I will post a link to that. It's been around a while, and let's see if I can find the link.
Yeah, I thought you had included on the landing page, but there we go.
Yeah, it is actually on the, isn't it? On
I
the
think so.
inclusive
I thought I saw it,
learning
and
page.
Christy just posted it in chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I remember when that e-learning
Thank you for that,
manifesto
Christy.
came out, and just sort of the impact it had, kind of on the e-learning world way back when.
Yes.
It's been a while, and
Yeah. So the Serious E-Learning Manifesto is all about how to make e-learning more effective, and it's awesome. I encourage you to check it out, read it. That's really awesome. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of build off that and and just focus on the inclusion aspects of learning, inclusive learning. So originally
Right.
this was called the Inclusive Learning Manifesto, and the lovely group of contributors that I posted had a great conversation about whether we wanted to use that word and how it has some connotations. And so we went back and forth with a couple of different words, but then I landed on pledge because I figured that's really what we want to do. We want to pledge to do better.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. And, and this is it. I can't help but wish that I had something like this, because I do a lot for my day job in O'Reilly, like in marketing.
Mhm.
I wish that we had something like this for marketers, and just for, for people in sales, and just to be able to,
Yeah, feel
to
free
get
to adapt.
right. And just
Yep.
the idea of this pledge and inclusion should be everywhere. But,
Mhm.
at the very least, I'm glad that you are guiding this, and, and have authored this. So, thank you so much for that work.
Well, thank you, and thanks, Christy, for posting links. Yeah,
All
awesome.
right. Well, let's
Okay,
see
well,
it.
thank you all
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Yeah, not seeing any questions, so I'll go ahead and close this one out. Um, yeah, fantastic. And tomorrow the fun continues. Let's see, we've got Aaron Huffman Richard. I think Aaron was in the session. Um, Aaron will be talking about social identities, impact on the learner. Looking forward to that. And then Lisa Spurko will be doing something that is going to be a little more hands-on for us. Tips and tricks for accessible PowerPoint presentations. So excited about that one as well for tomorrow. And then, of course, Thursday, Sudeep Mohandas is going to be here. And then Friday, gosh, we have a new speaker. Her name is Kim Fur. I just know her, like her nickname Kim Fur. And then who else? Oh, and Devin Torres will be on as well. So looking forward to that. And with that, I'm going to close it out, and we'll hopefully see everybody tomorrow.
All
Bye,
right,
everybody.
thanks. Bye.